Have you ever wondered why some people linger in your memory long after they're gone while others disappear the moment they exit the room? It's not their words. It's not how often they showed up. It's not even how attractive they were. It's the way they made you feel. That's what we call emotional imprinting. And it's the first and most powerful shift in transforming the way you relate, attract, and connect. Emotional imprinting is the art of leaving a mark on someone's soul without needing to constantly be in their life. And the truth is, it's not about doing more, it's about being more intentional. See, most of us are taught that if we want someone to remember us, we need to show up more. Be available, stay present, send good morning texts, be agreeable, be sweet, be low maintenance. And we fall into the trap of overextending, giving, and giving until we've diluted our own presence. But what if I told you the opposite is true? People don't remember the constant, they remember the contrast. They don't hold on to the frequency of your presence, they hold on to the feeling you left behind. Let me give you a metaphor. Imagine watching a movie. Now, do you remember every single scene? Or do you remember that one moment that made you cry? That one line that hit you right in the chest? That one scene that gave you goosebumps? That's the emotional imprint. And in your relationships, romantic or otherwise, you are either creating emotional moments that awaken something within someone, or you're just sharing time hoping it's enough. Time is not enough. A man doesn't miss the woman who is always there. He misses the woman who made him feel something he wasn't used to feeling. The world is full of surface level moments, dinners that feel routine, conversations that lack depth, connections built on shared memes, but not shared values. What cuts through the noise isn't what's typical, it's what's true. And to be remembered in that way, to be felt even in your absence, you have to stop showing up from your ego and start showing up from your essence. The ego says, if I keep texting him, he won't forget me. If I show up more, I'll matter more. If I try harder, he'll finally see my worth. But the essence whispers, I don't need to be loud to be felt. I don't need to perform to be valuable. I don't need to chase to be remembered. The essence creates stillness, and stillness creates contrast. Here's the truth. You don't leave an emotional imprint by being perfect. You leave it by being present. When you hold space for someone's vulnerability without rushing to fill the silence, when you lock eyes and actually listen instead of waiting to speak, when your laughter fills the room one moment and your gaze softens in the next, that's contrast. That's emotional resonance. Let's take it deeper. A man may meet 10 women who are beautiful, intelligent, and kind, but he only remembers the one who saw him. Not the curated version, not the polished version, the raw, hidden version. She looked past his performance and touched the part of him he forgot he had. That's why she stays on his mind. Not because she made herself available, but because she made herself unforgettable. So how do you begin to master this? You practice being energetically awake, not hyperactive, not performative, awake. You walk into a room and you pay attention to what no one else is noticing. You speak with intentionality. You don't rush connection, you shape it. Be the silence that's charged with meaning. Be the laughter that comes from deep inside your chest, not from trying to impress. Be the moment that makes someone stop scrolling through their life and actually feel something real. That's how you imprint. And let's talk about something subtle but powerful: anchors. Scent, sound, touch, texture, a signature fragrance, a unique way you laugh, the cadence of your voice, the way you lean in when something matters. These details embed you into someone's memory. You become not just a thought, but a feeling stored in their nervous system. And here's what makes it so powerful. You don't even have to be in the room, because you are the room. You're the scent on the pillow, the echo of the laugh, the rhythm of the memory. It's sensory, it's spiritual, it's energetic. And when you become aware of how you show up, not just physically, but emotionally and energetically, you stop trying to get a man to miss you and start becoming a woman he can't forget. Let's make this clear. This is not manipulation. It's not about playing games. It's about mastering the kind of presence that cannot be replicated. And that kind of presence comes from knowing who you are, from knowing what you bring, from not needing to beg for attention because your attention is already sacred. When a man feels that, when he sees that you're not trying to win him over, but rather that he has to rise to match you, he begins to feel the weight of your absence. And when your absence is powerful, your presence becomes priceless. So let me ask you this. Are you leaving behind emotional footprints or just digital ones? Are you being remembered because you were consistent or because you were impactful? The woman who transforms her relationships isn't the one who texts the most. She's the one who touches the deepest. If this message hit you deep, I want to invite you to reflect. What energy are you bringing into your connections? Are you present or are you just performing? Leave a comment with your thoughts. Like this video, if it stirred something in you. And don't forget to subscribe because this journey into emotional mastery and identity transformation is just getting started. Thank you for showing up for yourself today. Thank you for choosing growth. Let me ask you something real. How can someone miss you if you never give them space to feel your absence? This might sound harsh, but it's one of the most overlooked truths in relationships. The reason you feel unseen, underappreciated, or even invisible, it's not because you're not enough. It's because you're always there, emotionally, energetically, constantly available. And when something is always available, the human brain doesn't register its value. It adjusts to it, it expects it, and eventually it overlooks it. But when something beautiful steps away, when it disappears, even for a moment, the silence left behind speaks louder than any word you could have said. That's the power of space. That's the potency of silence. Most people are afraid of both. We equate silence with rejection. We think space means punishment. We panic in the pause. So we fill it with noise, with words, with check-ins, with good morning texts, with just thinking of you emojis, not because we're confident, but because we're scared. Scared that if we step back, we'll be forgotten. Scared that if we're not constantly reminding someone we're here, they'll leave. But let me reframe that for you. People don't miss what they don't lose, and no one can value what they've never had to live without. So what does it mean to use silence and space intentionally? Not as a punishment, not as manipulation, but as a sacred practice. It starts with emotional discipline. Not every urge to reach out deserves a reaction. Not every lonely night needs to be filled with a text. Not every moment of silence is a crisis. Some are opportunities for the other person to realize, wait, I actually miss her. Because here's what happens when you're always reaching out first. He never won this. He never has to think about what you're doing. He never experiences the contrast between your presence and your absence. And therefore, he never learns your value. Your silence doesn't say, I don't care. It says, I don't need to perform to prove my worth. Your space doesn't say, I'm abandoning you. It says, I trust the energy I've already planted. There's a reason why the most iconic songs have pauses. Because if it was just noise from start to finish, your brain would tune it out. What makes music beautiful is the space between the notes. And what makes a woman unforgettable is not how she fills every moment, but how she lets moments breathe. Silence is emotional punctuation. It's the comma that lets the feeling settle, the period that lets the memory take shape, the pause that creates the echo. And when you give someone space to sit in the echo of your presence, they begin to notice what they're actually missing. Let me paint you a picture. You've just had a beautiful evening together. Your energy was magnetic, your conversation flowed, your presence was unforgettable. And then the next day, you go quiet, not in a cold, dismissive way, not with resentment, but with grace. You don't flood his phone, you don't check in, you don't chase the afterglow. You lean back, you retreat with intention not to punish him, but to create contrast. And in that contrast, his mind starts to spiral. What is she doing right now? Is she thinking of me? Why haven't I heard from her yet? That wondering turns into wanting. That wanting turns into missing. And that missing becomes a quiet ache, the kind of ache that makes him reach for you without even realizing it. Let me be crystal clear. This is not a game. This isn't manipulation. This isn't playing hard to get. This is emotional sovereignty. It's knowing that your presence is powerful and that your absence is just as potent. You're not punishing him with silence. You're inviting him to feel the contrast between you being in his life and you not being there. Because when he realizes that his world is duller without you in it, that's when he starts to see your value clearly. That's when he starts to miss you, not because you pushed, not because you performed, but because you withdrew with dignity. Let's talk about urgency for a moment. Most people operate from urgency in relationships. If I don't respond quickly, he'll forget me. If I don't keep the energy going, it'll die. If I'm not consistent, he'll think I don't care. But here's the hard truth. That urgency is usually rooted in fear, not love. Love doesn't need to chase. Love doesn't need to control. Love doesn't need to constantly remind someone to care. A woman who operates from wholeness does not reach out from panic. She reaches out from fullness. She holds back from fullness. She radiates from fullness. And that fullness is magnetic. Imagine a fire. If you constantly fan it, it burns out. But if you let it breathe, if you give it space, it roars. It's the same with energy. When you hold your silence like a queen, calm, composed, not reactive, you drive him wild because he can't feel you the same way he used to. He starts checking his phone more. He rereads old texts. He stares at your last photo and he feels the gap. That gap is where missing is born. But most women sabotage this. They confuse silence with rejection. So they send the follow-up text. They post the story. They comment, hoping he'll respond. And in doing that, they dilute the power of absence. Remember this. Every moment you interrupt your own silence because you're afraid, you rob him of the opportunity to value you. Every time you fill the space with desperation, you cancel out the longing. Every time you refuse to pause, you prevent the other person from feeling your depth. So instead of rushing to fill the void, become the void. Be the space he aches to return to. And when he does, when he finally reaches back, meet him with openness. Not punishment, not ego, but with the kind of grace that says, I never needed to chase you to know my worth. That's when he'll realize you're not like anyone else. Because most women speak to be heard. You let silence do the talking. And when silence speaks, it says everything. Let me start with the truth that most people never learn until it's too late. Connection doesn't depend on how long you stay, but on when you choose to leave. Have you ever had a night so beautiful you didn't want it to end? A conversation that flowed, a laugh that echoed, a touch that lingered, and then just as the moment peaked, it was over. It left you wanting more, not in frustration, but in fascination. Not in confusion, but in craving. That's the power of the high note. See, most of us are taught to hold on tightly to the good moments. We stretch them, drag them, try to make them last. Because we think, if this is good, more must be better. But more isn't always better. Better is better. And sometimes the most powerful move you can make is to walk away before the moment fades, before the energy dips, before the magic dissolves into the mundane. Let's take this into relationships. Most women believe that the way to deepen connection is to spend more time, longer dates, endless phone calls, late night texts. And while presence matters, overexposure dulls the experience. When you stay too long emotionally, energetically, you risk becoming predictable, familiar, safe, easy to take for granted. But when you end on a high, when you leave at the peak of the energy, you transform from being pleasant to being powerful. Let me explain with a neuroscience lens. There's something called the peak end rule. It's a psychological principle that says we don't remember experiences based on their entirety. We remember the peak and the end. So if you want to be remembered, if you want to create emotional impact, you don't need to overstay. You need to design your exit. Think about the last great movie you watched. What stayed with you? The beginning, number, the ending, that one scene, that one moment, that one look or line that gave you chills. You don't need the whole script to be unforgettable. You just need a moment that lands like thunder in the soul. So let me ask you this. Are you lingering too long, hoping to be loved more? Or are you leaving while you're still glowing? A woman who leaves on a high note doesn't abandon. She elevates. She gives just enough to light him up, just enough to create resonance, just enough to make him think, I didn't want that to end. And then she walks away with grace. Not to manipulate, not to punish, but because she understands the spiritual art of timing. Let me offer you a visual metaphor. Think of yourself as a song. If you play on repeat all day long, your melody becomes background noise. But if your song plays in just the right moment, when the mood is right, when the energy is high, when the heart is open, you become unforgettable. And every time he hears that song again, or even something that reminds him of it, he'll be right back in that moment with you. That's how you become the echo that haunts his heart. So what does this look like in real life? Let's say the conversation is flowing, the energy is beautiful, he's laughing, you're glowing, the vibe is effortless. And right there, right at the peak, you check the time, smile softly, and say, "This has been amazing. I should head out." It's not abrupt, it's not cold, it's warm, calm, intentional. And what you've just done is mark the memory. You've frozen the energy at its most potent. And now he's sitting there, heart still open, wanting just a bit more, not because he's been deprived, but because he's been enchanted. The difference is everything. When you leave on a high note, you plant a seed. You don't force connection, you fertilize curiosity. And that curiosity grows into craving. He wants the next moment. He starts replaying the last one. He begins seeking you, not out of boredom, but out of emotionally anchored desire. Now let's bring this down to your daily habits. It's not just dates, it's text threads, it's FaceTime calls, it's the way you leave a room. Even your goodbyes can be high notes. Instead of trying to be the last to say goodnight, try being the one who ends the conversation when the vibe is still sweet. Instead of dragging the moment out until it dulls, leave him with a spark still flickering. It's not rejection, it's mastery. And if you're asking, but what if he thinks I'm not interested? Good. Let him wonder. Let him feel the gap. Let him sit in the ache of unfinished beauty, because mystery makes memory magnetic. It's not about playing hard to get. It's about protecting the purity of the moment. It's about being emotionally intelligent enough to close the chapter while it's still glowing. Think of it like this. Your energy is sacred. You are not background noise. You are a crescendo, a climax, a spark. So protect that. A woman who knows how to exit while the energy is still high becomes the reference point for joy, for connection, for that feeling he can't get elsewhere. She becomes the chapter he keeps rereading, the conversation he replays, the moment he compares every other experience to and finds them all lacking. Now, some may say, isn't that manipulative? Number, it's mindful. You're not withholding love, you're honoring it. You're not playing games. You're playing the long game, the game of resonance over repetition. You're not starving him, you're feeding him something rare. And in today's world, rare is remembered. So the next time you're with someone, friend, lover, partner, feel into the moment, feel the rise, feel the peak, and then choose to leave with light in your eyes and warmth in your goodbye. Not because you had to, cause you knew it would leave a mark. That's your power. That's your wisdom. That's what makes you unforgettable. Let's shift the energy now, because the question isn't just, how do I make him miss me? The deeper question is this: who do I become when I stop waiting to be chosen? Because here's the real truth. If the only time you feel magnetic is when someone else gives you attention, then your life isn't yours, it belongs to their gaze. And that is not power, that's imprisonment. Now, let me ask you something more real. When was the last time you felt deeply in love with your own life? Not your relationship, not your romantic timeline, your life. Not the curated version you post on Instagram, but the raw, honest, unfiltered version that you wake up to every day. Because here's what most people get wrong. They try to become irresistible to someone else while completely ignoring the magnetism of being irresistible to themselves. You don't attract love by orbiting someone else's world. You attract love by building one of your own. That's the woman a man misses, the one who was already glowing before he arrived. You see, energy is everything. And the most magnetic energy on earth is a woman who doesn't need anyone to validate her joy. She's not seeking a savior. She's not begging for connection. She's busy being her own source. She's booking flights, starting projects, investing in her health, reading books that expand her mind, laughing with her friends, dancing in her kitchen, building a life that feels like hers. And guess what happens? Her absence becomes noticeable because she's not sitting around waiting to be texted. She's living. She's not performing for attention. She's radiating from purpose. And when a man meets a woman like that, something shifts in him. He doesn't just want her, he wants to rise to meet her. Let's talk about the psychology of desire for a moment. Desire is not just about physical attraction, it's about emotional admiration. Men don't stay with women who need them. They stay with women who inspire them. When your life is rich, when you're pursuing your passions, protecting your peace, building something that excites you, you don't need to ask someone to miss you. They just do. They see your presence as a privilege. They understand your time is earned, not assumed. And your light doesn't dim just because they step out of the room. But too many women shrink when love enters the picture. They make space for him by erasing parts of themselves. They start canceling their plans. They drop their routines. They let go of their goals. They begin orbiting around his schedule, his needs, his attention, and slowly, quietly, they begin to vanish. And here's the cruel irony. The more you disappear into him, the less he sees you. Not because he's cruel, but because you stopped being your own center of gravity. You became available, yes, but unremarkable. Accessible, but forgettable. Because you were no longer living your life. You were waiting for his to validate yours. But that stops now. You are not here to shrink. You are not here to pause your growth for love. You are here to become so lit up by your own existence that love becomes a complement, not a necessity. Imagine this. You wake up with purpose. You've got places to go, people to connect with, books to finish, a passion project that makes your soul burn with life. He texts you and you smile, but you don't drop everything because your life is not a blank space waiting to be filled. It's a masterpiece in motion. And here's the thing. When he sees that, he starts wondering if he even has space in your world. He feels challenged, not threatened to rise into your frequency, because a woman in love with her own life doesn't beg. She doesn't chase. She doesn't perform. She simply becomes a standard, and standards are magnetic. They create boundaries. They protect energy. They say, I'm not desperate to be chosen. I'm already whole. You want to know when a man starts to miss you? When he realizes your joy doesn't depend on him. When he sees that you don't need his presence to feel radiant. When he scrolls your feed and sees your smile isn't performative, it's authentic. Not staged, not filtered, not thirsty. Just you rooted in your element. That's when he feels it in his chest. That slow ache, that subtle craving, that tug that says she's not waiting, she's evolving. And that craving, it doesn't come from your text. It comes from your transformation. Now, let me be clear. This is not about being so busy that you become emotionally unavailable. It's not about faking happiness or pretending to be too cool to care. It's about finding your center again, realigning your energy, and building a life that keeps you excited to wake up, whether love shows up or not. And when love does show up, you greet it with openness, not with desperation, with standards, not with scarcity. Because here's what makes you irresistible. You're not the girl who's just trying to be chosen. You're the woman who knows she already has value with or without the spotlight. And the moment you stop proving your worth, you start radiating it. So what does this look like practically? Take that trip you've been postponing. Start the business you've been doubting. Go to the gym, not to impress anyone, but to honor your strength. Read poetry that stirs your soul. Dance without recording it. Create beauty and let yourself live in it. Because the woman who lives for herself is not selfish. She's sacred. And a man doesn't chase sacredness to possess it. He chases it because it's rare. So if you've ever wondered why he's not missing you, maybe it's time to stop pouring your energy into being remembered and start pouring it into being radiant. Because the most unforgettable people in life are not the loudest, not the most available, not the most giving. They're the ones who had something beautiful going on with or without you. Let's start with a truth you may have never been told. You don't need to be weaker to make a man feel stronger. You don't have to shrink your light for him to find his. There's this dangerous misunderstanding floating around that in order for a man to feel masculine, powerful, or heroic, you need to dim your brilliance, act helpless, pretend you don't know what you're doing, make yourself smaller so he can feel bigger. But here's what I want you to remember with your whole heart. The man who is meant for you will not be intimidated by your strength. He will be inspired by it. Now, with that said, let's talk about something deeply embedded in male psychology, something researchers and relationship experts have named the hero instinct. It's not a fantasy. It's not manipulation. It's not about stroking his ego with false praise. It's about speaking to a core part of his identity that wants to contribute, to protect, to offer something meaningful to the person he cares about. But here's the twist most people miss. You don't activate this instinct by becoming needy. You activate it by being open, not empty. There's a difference between allowing someone in and depending on them for your survival. Let's explore that. A man's hero instinct gets triggered not when you collapse, but when you invite him to rise. Not when you beg, but when you make space. Not when you hand him your entire emotional life, but when you give him one piece and say, I love your insight on this. It's about inclusion, not dependency. Let me give you a metaphor. Imagine your life as a beautiful garden. It's blooming. It's alive. You've been tending to it with love, discipline, and care. The flowers are yours. The soil is sacred. Now, when a man enters your life, you don't hand him the garden and say, please water it or it will die. You show him around. You invite him in. You hand him the watering can and say, would you like to contribute to something that already has life? That's where the shift happens. Because you're not saying, I need you to fix me. You're saying, I value what you bring and there's space for it here. That is subtle, but profound. And here's the magic. When a man feels needed without being responsible for your entire identity, something inside him awakens. He doesn't just like being around you, he feels purposeful around you. He doesn't just see your beauty, he sees his own growth reflected in your presence. Because the right woman doesn't just ask a man to be more, she reveals the man he already is and makes him want to bring that version forward. Now, practically speaking, how do you activate his hero instinct without abandoning your strength? Here's what it doesn't look like. Tay, constantly texting him every little emotional drama and expecting him to solve it. ATE acting, incapable just to get attention. Putting yourself down so he feels more needed. Asking for help when you don't actually want or need it. That's performative. That's manipulation. That's not sustainable. Here's what it does look like. Asking for his input on something he's genuinely skilled at, not as a test, but with respect. Saying things like, I love how grounded you are in moments like this. What's your take? Inviting his presence into your challenges without expecting him to fix you just to witness you. Celebrating his natural strengths out loud, especially the ones he may not even see in himself. Let me tell you something I've learned over and over again. People rise when they feel seen for who they want to be. So when you reflect the best in him, not with flattery, but with authenticity, you give him permission to live into it. That's not strategy. That's emotional generosity. And here's the deeper layer. The woman who knows how to trigger the hero instinct without sacrificing her independence is rare. She's not performing. She's not pretending. She's standing in her own energy and saying, I don't need you to complete me, but I'd love for us to grow together. And that's irresistible. That's not just a woman he misses. That's a woman he respects. That's a woman he fights to stay close to. Because every time he walks away from her, he doesn't feel drained, he feels elevated. He feels like a better man just by being in her orbit. And that imprint, it sticks. It lingers. It draws him back, not because you asked him to, but because he wants to return to who he is when he's with you. That's the kind of love that lasts. That's the kind of attraction that outlives the butterflies. So let me offer you a challenge today, not just in romantic relationships, but in every connection you have today. Instead of asking, how do I get more love? Start asking, how do I awaken greatness in the people around me? Instead of demanding attention, start holding space. Instead of trying to be impressive, try being deeply present. Because when you speak to the part of someone that wants to rise, they do. And when you do it without compromising your own fire, your own rhythm, your own center, you become unforgettable. Not because you demanded it, but because you embodied it. You didn't become less to trigger his more. You stayed whole and gave him the opportunity to match your energy. That's the dance of divine polarity. That's the essence of a powerful, conscious, loving connection. So the next time you want to be remembered, ask yourself, Am I trying to be missed through absence? Or am I making myself unforgettable through the energy I hold when I'm fully here? Let's take a moment to shift from the mind to the body. Because if you truly want to live in someone's memory, you can't just stay in their thoughts, you have to live in their nervous system. Let me explain. Have you ever caught a scent that instantly pulled you back into a moment you'd forgotten? A song that made your chest tighten because it reminded you of someone? A certain touch, a certain rhythm, a certain tone of voice that brought a flood of emotion you couldn't explain? That's not imagination. That's sensory imprinting. It's how we store memory, not just cognitively, but viscerally. And when you learn to speak the language of the senses, you become unforgettable. Not because you're louder, not because you're always present, but because even in your absence, your essence lingers. See, most people try to be remembered through logic, through effort, through visibility. But the deepest part of the human psyche isn't wired through effort, it's wired through experience. And experience isn't intellectual, it's embodied, which means if you want to be remembered, you have to become a feeling. So let me ask you a powerful question. What does your energy feel like to him when you're not in the room? Because when a man can still feel you even after you've left, that's when you've transcended performance. That's when you've become a memory in motion. And here's how you do it. 1. Scent the silent signature. There is nothing more primal than scent. Science shows us that the olfactory system, your sense of smell, is directly linked to the part of the brain that processes emotion and memory. That's why one whiff of a certain perfume can instantly trigger a flashback, a longing, a mood. So choose a signature fragrance, one that's warm, bold, a little mysterious, one that feels like you, not because it's trendy, but because it becomes an invisible imprint. You hug him goodbye, and the scent stays on his collar. You leave the room, and the air still carries your presence. Days later, he walks past someone wearing the same perfume, and boom, you flash through his chest like lightning. That's not manipulation, that's mastery. 2. Voice the rhythm of remembrance. Your voice isn't just sound, it's energy, it's texture, it's vibration. Start noticing how you speak when you're emotionally grounded. Do you rush? Do you fill silence because you're nervous? Or do you speak with intentional cadence, allowing your words to land, your pauses to breathe, your tone to seduce, not through volume, but through presence? You want to become the voice that calms his storm, the sound that plays in his head when he lies awake at night. Not because you shouted to be heard, but because you whispered with meaning. The woman who understands the power of her voice becomes a soundtrack, not a noise, a note, not static, a song. And long after you leave, that song plays on repeat. 3. Touch the sacred echo. Think of how rarely we're truly touched in life, not just physically, but intentionally. A gentle hand on his chest, a soft brush of your fingers across his wrist, a playful squeeze of his arm in laughter, a longer than expected hug that says more than words ever could. You're not groping for affection, you're anchoring experience. And the key is not to overdo it, it's to do it consciously. Let your touch be sacred, not constant, not chaotic, but memorable. Because a well-placed moment of physical presence can last longer than 100 text messages. It becomes an imprint, not just on his skin, but in his soul. Now here's where it gets spiritual. Every sense is a doorway, a gateway, a portal into memory, emotion, desire. And the woman who walks through those doors with intention doesn't just stay on his mind. She haunts his body. She becomes a body memory, a reaction he can't explain, a sense of aliveness he only feels around her. So don't underestimate the small moments, the glass of wine you let him sip from your glass, the taste of you shared through something ordinary, the song you played softly in the background during your first real talk. 2. The candle you always light, same scent, same glow, same warmth every time he's near. You think it's a detail, he feels it as emotion, because details are what create the architecture of memory. And when those details are consistent, sensory, and intentional, you're no longer just a woman he dated. You become a place he can't stop returning to in his mind. Here's the deeper truth. The modern world is loud, fast, overstimulated. Everyone's screaming for attention. But the woman who slows down, the woman who uses silence, softness, scent, tone, texture, she becomes the pause he didn't know he needed. She becomes the space that breathes life into his overstimulated soul. And that is unforgettable. So what does this require of you? Presence. When you're with him, be with him. Put your phone down. Stop planning your next move. Let yourself feel the moment, and he will too. Because when you're fully there, grounded, graceful, alert, everything you do becomes an experience. And the human brain doesn't forget experiences. We forget conversations. We forget text threads. We forget flirty banter. But we never forget how someone made our body feel. So become the woman who is felt even in silence. He won't know why he's thinking of you. He won't know why his heart races when he hears your name. He won't know why your memory shows up while he's driving, working, lying in bed. But he'll feel it because you are no longer just a memory. You are a sensation, and sensation always calls the body home. So I want you to ask yourself, what sensory anchors am I leaving behind? When I leave the room, does my presence stay with him? Have I become the pause in his day or just another distraction? Because when you master the senses, you don't need to be louder. You don't need to compete. You don't need to remind him. You've already made your mark. Let me begin this section with a paradox that may surprise you. The woman who is most missed is both predictable and mysterious. Yes, both. Not just mysterious, not just reliable. She is mysteriously predictable, and that's why she becomes unforgettable. Let me break that down, because in today's culture, we've been fed two extremes. You're either the cool girl who's aloof, unreadable, detached, or the good girl who's reliable, available, and always present. But true feminine power, the kind that keeps a man mentally, emotionally, and spiritually invested, lives in the tension between the two. That's where mystery isn't confusion. It's clarity wrapped in layers. That's where predictability isn't boring. It's emotional safety that invites deeper pursuit. So what does it mean to be mysteriously predictable? It means this. He knows your character, but not your next move. He knows how you'll carry yourself, but not how you'll surprise him. He knows your presence brings peace, but your energy still sparks curiosity. Let me explain why this matters psychologically. Every man, and really every human being, is wired to crave two emotional needs. Safety, can I trust you? Excitement, can you still surprise me? If you're only safety, you become routine. If you're only mystery, you become unstable. But if you master both, you become irresistible, because now he can relax into your presence. But he's also awake in your presence. He can open emotionally, but still lean in to discover more. He feels secure, but never entitled. That's the sweet spot. Now, how do you actually live this? Let's start with the predictable part. This isn't about robotic consistency. It's about being emotionally trustworthy. He knows you're not going to explode in drama when things go silent. He knows you're not going to seek revenge or spiral if he makes a mistake. He knows you respond with grace, with honesty, with clarity, even when the energy shifts. Your predictability is your emotional maturity. It's what tells him, you can bring your mess here, but I'm not going to become part of it. You can have your space and I won't collapse into insecurity. You can share your truth and I won't weaponize your vulnerability. And let me tell you something profound. The more emotionally grounded you become, the more deeply a man feels safe to open up. Because no man, no human opens up to chaos. But he also doesn't fall in love with comfort alone, which brings us to the second half of the formula. The mystery. Now I want you to hear this. Mystery isn't about playing games. It's not about withholding love. It's not about being distant or emotionally cold. Mystery is simply this. You don't reveal everything all at once. You hold parts of yourself sacred. You allow him to discover you in chapters, not all in one sitting. You let your story unfold with rhythm, not urgency. Because when you give someone everything too fast, they stop listening, they stop leaning in, They think they've figured you out. But when you drop breadcrumbs instead of dumping the whole loaf, when you share your soul with discernment, not desperation, you activate the most ancient desire in human nature, curiosity. And that curiosity becomes devotion when it's paired with emotional safety. He knows you're not performing. He knows you're not lying. He just senses there's more to your mind, more to your past, more to your heart, more to your sensuality, more to your essence. You are not withholding, you are weaving. And every time he thinks he knows you, he sees another layer, a new angle, a new depth, a new truth that wasn't visible yesterday. Now imagine what that does to a man emotionally. You become a journey, not a destination. You become a dance, not a routine. You become a poem, not a post. And that energy, it haunts him, not in confusion, but in captivation. So here's what mysteriously predictable looks like in real life. Tway, you're emotionally consistent. He knows how you'll respond. END, but your energy is ever evolving. He doesn't know what will light you up next. Kend, you're present fully there when you're with him. Ted, but you vanish with grace fully gone when you're not. Ty, and you give, but you don't overextend. Tay, you share, but you don't overshare. Ted, you open, but you don't collapse. That's not confusion. That's mastery. And the best part, this energy comes not from performance, but from deep self-connection. Because the woman who is mysteriously predictable isn't trying to keep him interested. She's simply in alignment. She knows who she is. She knows what she values. She knows how to respond, not react. And she protects her story like it's sacred because it is. She doesn't fear being misunderstood. She doesn't need to over-explain. She lets her energy speak louder than her words. And when a man meets a woman like this, here's what happens. He feels emotionally grounded and spiritually intrigued. He feels like he knows her, and yet he wants to know more. He stops comparing her to others because nothing else quite feels like her. She's the one he thinks about during quiet commutes, the one he dreams about on silent nights, the one who made him feel something he didn't know he was missing. Not because she shouted, but because she whispered wisdom with her silence. Not because she gave everything, but because she revealed the right things with grace, with timing, with trust. So if you're wondering, why isn't he chasing me? Why does he feel distant? Why doesn't he see my worth? It might be time to ask yourself, am I emotionally safe but energetically dull? Am I mysterious or just emotionally unavailable? Am I being consistent or am I being controlling? And the most powerful question of all, am I revealing myself with intention or dumping everything to feel seen? Because you don't need to be loud to be unforgettable. You don't need to be a mystery to create allure. You don't need to play games to be pursued. You just need to become the woman who knows how to hold space and stir curiosity at the same time. That's where your power lives. Let's take a breath together. You've come with me on this journey through emotional imprinting, silence, timing, self-worth, embodied energy, and sacred mystery. And now, I want to bring you home not to a man's arms, but to your own center. Because here's what I need you to understand with every fiber of your being. You were never meant to beg for remembrance. You were designed to be unforgettable, not because of what you gave, not because of how much you chased, not because of how perfectly you performed, but because of how fully you stood in your truth. See, so much of our pain in love doesn't come from rejection. It comes from forgetting ourselves in the pursuit of someone else. We lose our edge trying to soften enough to be chosen. We abandon our joy trying to fit inside his life. We silence our voice, hoping he'll hear the unspoken ache behind our kindness. And when he doesn't miss us, we turn inward and assume the worst. Maybe I wasn't enough. Maybe I was too much. Maybe I should have tried harder. But what if I told you it was never about trying harder? It was always about remembering who you are. Because the moment you remember your worth, you stop seeking permission to be missed. You stop wondering if you're on his mind, and you start building a life where you are the one on your own mind first. You stop chasing validation and start chasing alignment. You stop measuring your value by how someone responds to your absence and start recognizing your worth by how deeply you show up for yourself in your presence. Let's come back to the word miss. When someone misses you, what they're really saying is, you brought something into my world that made it feel more alive. That's it. So the question isn't, how do I get him to miss me? The question is, am I living a life that is so full, so rich, so grounded that my presence naturally awakens something in people? Because when you live that way, missing becomes a byproduct, not the goal. You become the woman who doesn't just walk into a room, she shifts the energy in it. The woman whose silence is felt just as deeply as her laughter. The woman who brings so much peace, clarity, and beauty into a moment that her absence echoes louder than most people's noise. But let's get even deeper. The woman who is truly unforgettable, she doesn't need to be missed to know she mattered. Because she leaves behind more than emotion, she leaves behind impact. She doesn't need closure from him, she gives completion to herself. She doesn't collapse when someone walks away because she's not a half looking for another half. She is already whole. She knows that love is not a performance. It's not about overextending, overthinking, or overgiving. It's about resonance, alignment, shared frequency. And if someone doesn't feel that, she doesn't force it. She forgives it and moves on. Because the woman who truly values herself doesn't wait to be missed. She moves forward, glowing with grace, radiating with wisdom, walking away with elegance. And the irony? That's when they miss her most. Not when she begged, not when she proved, but when she reclaimed her energy. That's when he replays her words. That's when her laughter comes back to him on a quiet drive. That's when he feels her absence like an ache. Because she's not just gone, she's unavailable to anything less than what she deserves. You see, the deepest missing doesn't come from space, it comes from realization. He realizes that you weren't just nice. You were rare. You weren't just beautiful. You were anchored. You weren't just loving. You were elevating. And now that energy is no longer accessible. You didn't disappear. You transformed. You became unavailable to chaos, unavailable to half effort, unavailable to being someone's backup plan. And in that transformation, you didn't become hard. You became whole. So let this be your reminder. You don't have to perform to be remembered. You don't have to suffer to be seen. You don't have to wait in silence, hoping someone misses you. Instead, become so deeply aligned with your joy, your peace, your purpose, that missing you becomes inevitable. Because it's not about being louder, sexier, more available, or more accommodating. It's about being the kind of woman who knows this truth. I was never meant to be easy to forget because I was never meant to be easy to replace. So I want you to take everything we've covered, every strategy, every insight, every emotional shift, and do something radical with it. Don't use it to chase love. Use it to elevate yourself. Use it to come home to your power. Because when you become the woman who leaves emotional imprints instead of chasing approval, honors silence and space as sacred, exits at the high note, not the low, builds a magnetic life she actually enjoys, triggers his hero instinct without sacrificing herself, and uses the senses to leave a spiritual signature, balances mystery with emotional integrity. You stop wondering if he's thinking about you. You know, he is, but more importantly, you're thinking about you again. You're investing in your own growth. You're filling your cup first. You're building a life so radiant, so textured, so alive that love becomes a celebration, not a lifeline. So I'll leave you with this. Don't try to be unforgettable. Just be unapologetically yourself. That energy, that presence can't be faked. It can't be copied. And it cannot be forgotten. Thank you for walking this journey with me. If this message awakens something inside you, go back to these words whenever you start to doubt your power. You were never too much. You were never not enough. You were simply not meant to fit into anything smaller than your fullest expression. Now walk in your wholeness and let them miss the version of you that only exists once in a lifetime.